Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 19, Text 5. This is the demigods are glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and how the land of Bharatavarsa is so desirable to take birth there because of the facility and the opportunity that's offered there for preparing very quickly and very efficiently for going back home, back to Godhead. And that is where we have taken birth, is in Bharatavarsa. So these are the continuation of the prayers of the demigods. So translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. The Supreme Personality of Godhead fulfills the material desires of a devotee who approaches Him with such motives. But He does not bestow benedictions upon the devotee that will cause him to demand more benedictions again. However, the Lord willingly gives a devotee shelter at His own lotus feet, even though such a person does not aspire for it. And that shelter satisfies all his desires. That is the Supreme Personality's special mercy. So, the Supreme Personality of Godhead fulfills the material desires. If someone approaches the Lord asking for material benedictions, material facilities, material things, then the Lord fulfills that, but not so that the devotee wants it again. Like, in other words, we can see they become fully satisfied when the Lord supplies a devotee with their material desires, which means sense gratification. So the Lord supplies the sense gratification, but in such a way that the devotee isn't agitated for more, whereas we see the opposite is if for the person who is not a devotee, who has no desire to go to Krishna at all, and may even be totally inimical to Krishna, seeing that because their desire for sense gratification is so strong, they don't want it to abate. They don't want it to be quelled. They don't actually want it to be fully satisfied. They want to fan the sparks and the fire of material lust and greed. That's the problem with the material situation, is that it's never satisfied. Material desires are never satisfied. And they burn like fire. And the more they're try to satisfy them materially, the more they increase, become inflamed. And in this way, the living entity is dragged through the different modes of material nature perpetually. But the mercy of the Lord is that He will satisfy those desires so that they are fully satisfied and that the desire for them goes away, backs off. Because this is for a devotee, the Lord will do this. Because a devotee means someone who actually wants to go to Krishna, wants to serve Krishna, wants to return home back to Godhead, and wants to become free from material desire. But they may be stuck with some material desires. Just can't shake it. The Lord fulfills the material desires. He's so kind, so merciful. But in such a way that the material desire goes away. What was it Prabhupada said about the alcoholic? If you can get the alcoholic to accept that what he's looking for when he drinks is the ecstasy of love of God, and he's looking for Krishna, and that every time he drinks he thinks, I'm looking for Krishna, then pretty soon the drinking will go away and all the alcoholic will have is Krishna. If the person can agree that what they're looking for is Krishna, is love of God, they're just looking in the wrong place, in the wrong way. This is the power of the holy name. It purifies. The holy name purifies even the most foul or contaminated material desires. The holy name purifies. And in such a way that one is left with Krishna. There's a little saying that if Krishna likes someone, he gives them everything. If he loves them, he takes everything away. So this is another aspect of that if Krishna loves the person, and the devotee is a devotee, then Krishna takes everything away. It means he takes all the attachment to material desire away. But sometimes people, they hear this, and then, I don't want Krishna. He's going to take everything away. All my sense gratification will be gone. And they must be thinking, then I'll be left with nothing. If I don't have my sense gratification, how can I live? And so they're not so inclined to get very much excited about Krishna consciousness. They're going to lose all their sense gratification. But for a devotee, someone who does have attraction to Krishna, can understand that there is a goal to human life, that we are eternal living beings, and it's simply the outer coverings that are temporary. Such a person still entangled by material desires, desire for sense gratification. And Krishna fulfills that in such a way that that desire goes away. He takes it away. So the demigods are glorifying Krishna. And however, the Lord willingly gives the devotee shelter at his own lotus feet, even though such a person does not aspire for it. And that shelter satisfies all his desires. And that is the Supreme Personality Special Mercy. So when we say, well, how does he do that? How does he satisfy those material desires in such a way that they go away? How is that possible? Because he gives himself. He's the reservoir of all pleasure. So he gives that devotee shelter at his lotus feet, even though the person may not be aspiring for it. And the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet satisfies all his desires. So we have someone who's motivated. They're not necessarily, this is the type of person being discussed here. They're not necessarily desiring Krishna. No. Because this is that person who's not really desiring Krishna, the desire for material sense gratification is stronger than the desire to go to Krishna. But because they acknowledge Krishna, they acknowledge God, Krishna, is there, and that they need to go to Krishna for material satisfaction, because the Lord is the controller and the owner of everything and everyone, is the source of everyone and everything. But because they acknowledge Krishna and they go to Krishna, but they're not going to Krishna to serve Krishna and love Krishna. No, they're going there because they want something else. But they're going to the right place. And what Krishna does with such a person is, oh, they're approaching me? They're approaching me for this silly thing? Don't they know? They approach me, they can have everything, and they only want this nasty, silly little thing? But they're approaching me? Let me give them their silly little, nasty little thing, their material, temporary gratification. And I'll do it in such a way that they also get me. They get shelter at my lotus feet. And that shelter will satisfy all desires. Maybe not, this doesn't relate directly, but it's indirectly. It's related. This little, I was just remembering a little illustration. I believe it was Sanatan Goswami, one of the devotees at that time, great devotees at that time, had a touchstone. A touchstone is a stone that can turn whatever it touches into gold. Boy, wouldn't we like to have that today, right? Anyway, he had one of these. And a devotee, one of these materialistically inclined persons, who acknowledges the existence of God and knows he's the source of everything, but at the same time the desire for devotional service really isn't, it's not kindled. They're still approaching God for material things. And he heard that Sanatan, this great sage, this great saint, has this touchstone. I got to go there, I got to get it. Like I say, I may not know this story. I may not be even repeating it properly, but hopefully the gist of it is there. So he approached Sanatan for the touchstone. And Sanatan gave it to him. He said, oh, you want the touchstone? You're approaching me for the touchstone? That thing that turns other things into gold? Oh, it's over there I put it in the trash pile over there. I'm like, put it in the trash pile? Such a valuable thing's in the trash pile. Sanatan says, you're welcome. You approached me for that. I have it. If you want it, take it. It's in the trash pile. So the person took it. And he was getting the benefit of it materially. But he was always thinking, why is it in the trash pile? And of course, just turning things into gold really doesn't satisfy the soul. I mean, it can be a lot of excitement at first, but transcendentalists and spiritualists know that no amount of material opulence satisfies the soul. It's just all external. And the real craving is the transcendental, loving, devotional service of the Lord, making that connection spiritually, which has nothing to do with how much gold a person has. Though material opulence can back off the material distresses, and then if a person uses that better facility for developing their spiritual life and for helping to serve the Lord, preaching the message of Godhead, then that's very good. And that does happen. It's very fortunate. But the other thing also happens, that people simply go off the deep end on sense gratification, become very degraded. So, double-edged sword there. So this person, they were on that edge. They had that edge. Were they to simply run off into the sunset with the touchstone and just become completely absorbed in material sense gratification and become degraded, lose whatever little spiritual realizations they did have, whatever little Krishna consciousness? Or could they make advancement from that point? Now, said that just a few moments association with a pure devotee, less than a second actually, it could be less than a second's association with a pure devotee, can turn a person's life completely around, give them the direction back home, back to Godhead. That's the power of the pure devotee. So that's what happened in this instance. The person who approached Sanatan for the touchstone had some association with Sanatan. And he approached Sanatan asking for something. Of course, it was not what he was asking for, wasn't the special gift that Sanatan had to give, but he got the touchstone. But he was always thinking, it was in the trash. Why did he dispose of it? Why wasn't it important to him? Why wasn't he using it? And he thought, he must have something else even more valuable. He must have something more valuable. He's not a fool. He must have something more valuable. So he returned to Sanatan, and Sanatan said, yes, I have something more valuable. Very good. Very good. See, this is the association of the pure devotees like this. It is the most valuable thing, the association of the pure devotee. Hearing the messages of Godhead from the pure devotee is the most valuable thing. And so he took away the attachment this person had for getting all this gold. Took it away. Took that attachment away. Took the touchstone away. If you will, put the touchstone back in the trash, I can give you the most valuable thing. So this person was very greedy. They'd already experienced what the touchstone could give. And they could see the limitations of what the touchstone could give, that it was all external. And here Sanatan says he has the most valuable thing. Just put the touchstone back in the trash over there in the corner, and I'll give you the most valuable thing. And then he was able to communicate, reawaken in the heart of that person devotional service. He was able to plant the seed of bhakti in that person. And they were on their way back home, back to Godhead. So, approaching the Lord's devotee, was like that. Sanatan gave that person his mercy, his lotus feet, shelter at his lotus feet. Although the person approached him, didn't approach him for that. Approached him because he wanted the touchstone so he could get some gold. But that's what a pure devotee is like. They fulfill the desires. And that's what the Lord is like, because the pure devotee is the Lord's representative. They will fulfill the material desires of a living being, but in such a way that they get the shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord. And then those desires go away. So the demigods here are glorifying this. And they say that is the Supreme Personality's special mercy. We have the commentary by Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada's purport. The devotees mentioned in the previous verse approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead with material motives. But this verse explains how such devotees are saved from low desires. Srimad Bhagavatam advises, Akama sava kamava moksha kama udaradi tivrina bhakti yogina yajita purusham param. Whether one is freed from all material desires, is full of material desires, or desires to become one with the Supreme, he should engage in devotional service. In this way, not only will the devotee's desires be fulfilled, but the day will come when he will have no other desire than to serve the lotus feet of the Lord. One who engages in the service of the Lord with some motive is called Sakama Bhakta. One who serves the Lord without any motives is called Akama Bhakta. Krishna, so merciful, he turns a Sakama Bhakta into an Akama Bhakta. A pure devotee, an Akama Bhakta, who has no material motives, is satisfied simply to serve the lotus feet of the Lord. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Yam labva chaparam labam manyate nadikam tata. If one engages in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord, he does not want anything more. This is the highest stage of devotional service. The Lord is so kind, even to a Sakama Bhakta, a motivated devotee, that he satisfies his desires in such a way that one day he becomes an Akama Bhakta. Dhruva Maharaj, for example, became a Bhakta with the motive of getting a better kingdom than that of his father. But finally he became an Akama Bhakta and said to the Lord, Svapin kritatosmi varam nayache. My dear Lord, I am very satisfied simply to serve your lotus feet. I do not want any material benefits. Sometimes it's found that a small child eats dirty things, but his parents take away dirty things and offer him a sandesh or some other sweetmeat. Devotees who aspire for material benedictions are compared to such children. The Lord is so kind, he takes away the material desires, gives them the highest benediction. Therefore, even for material motives, one should not worship anyone other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One must engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord so that all his desires will be fulfilled, and at the end he can go back home, back to Godhead. This is explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Anyakami, a devotee, may desire something other than devotional service to the lotus feet of the Lord. Yadikari Krishnera Bhajan. But if he engages in Krishna's service, Namagiteha Krishna Tare Dena Swacharana, Krishna gives him shelter at his lotus feet, even though he does not aspire for it. Krishna Kahe, the Lord says, Amabhaje, he's engaged in my service. Maje Visaya Sukha, but he wants benefits of material sense gratification. Amrita Chari Visamati. Such a devotee is like a person who asks for poison instead of nectar. Ebara Murka, that's his foolishness. Ami Vigna, but I'm experienced. E Murka Visaya Kena Diba. Why should I give such a foolish person the dirty things of material enjoyment? Swacharanamrita, it would be better for me to give him shelter at my lotus feet. Visaya Bulaiba, I shall cause him to forget all material desires. Kamalagi Krishna Bhaji, if one engages in the service of the Lord for sense gratification, Paya Krishna Rase, the result is that he ultimately gets a taste for serving the lotus feet of Krishna. Kamachari Dahaite Haya Abhilase, he then gives up all material desires and wants to become an eternal servant of the Lord. Hare Krishna, so nice. Text 28. We are now living in the heavenly planets, undoubtedly as a result of our having performed ritualistic ceremonies, pious activities, yagnas, and having studied the Vedas. However, our lives here one day will be finished. We pray at that time, if any merit remains for our pious activities, we may again take birth in Bhāgavatam as human beings, able to remember the lotus feet of the Lord. The Lord's so kind that he personally comes to the land of Bhāgavatam and expands the good fortune of its people. So now this is the demigods speaking. Demigods, they're in the heavenly planets. Their standard of living is, their standard of sense gratification is so high. And they're entrusted with very significant posts in the management of the material energy, material world. Their lifespans are incredibly long. And there's no suffering there. They're just enjoying eternally. I'm not eternally, for a very long time. What they're saying is here that we realize our wonderful position is not eternal, and it will be finished. And what they're praying is that when it is through, when our long, long lifetime of sense gratification in these heavenly planets is through, saying, we pray at that time, if any merit remains from our pious activities, we may again take birth in Bhāgavatam as human beings, able to remember the lotus feet of the Lord. So what does that say about heavenly planets? People aspire for these heavenly planets. They aspire for heaven to enjoy heavenly delights. And they perform austerities. The demigods are saying here, we performed ritualistic ceremonies, pious activities, sacrifices. We studied the Vedas, and that's how we got here, to this heavenly planet, heavenly planets. But we know it's going to be through. It's like somebody who works really hard and acquires a lot of money so they can go on a real nice vacation. But they know the vacation is going to be through. So they worked very hard. Sacrifices, pious activities, ritualistic ceremonies, and they acquired pious merits. Merits. They're merits. It's like working to get money. They were working to get these pious credits. And that's how they were able to go to the heavenly planets. But it's going to end. Then what? So what they're saying is here, they want to pray to come to the earthly planet, Bhāgavatam, as human beings. Why? Because the Lord is so kind, he personally comes to the land of Bhāgavatam and expands the good fortune of its people. This is pretty wonderful. In this universe, there is a place called Bhāgavatam. Now, there are other universes. And the Lord expands into those universes also. But in this particular universe, it's a rather small one, we understand. This particular universe, in the land of Bhāgavatam, is where the Lord personally comes to expand the good fortune of its people. This is where the Varnashram system is up and running, so that anyone who takes birth here as a human being can run through that system, the Bhāgavatam system, to make gradual progress toward leaving the material universe altogether. This is the jumping off point, Bhāgavatam. This is where we are, our good fortune. That's why if we miss it, it's so unfortunate. And only 500 years ago, the Lord has personally come here to expand the good fortune of what people? Of us. He's come here to expand our good fortune. And the demigods are praying to come here. This is the place. We're in the right place at the right time. Just have to take it. Take the mercy. It's flowing. It's running. The books are here. Devotees are here. The chanting is here. The Lord has just been here only 500 years ago. His footprints are still fresh in the sand in Navadvip. All his potencies are in his holy name. So we are the most fortunate persons. The demigods want to come here so they can take part. They can get ready to go home, back to Godhead. Prabhupada's commentary. It is certainly as a result of pious activities that one takes birth in the heavenly planets, but from those planets one must nevertheless come down again to earth, as stated in Bhagavad Gita. Chine punye marche lokam vishanti. Even the demigods must return to earth to work like ordinary men when the results of their pious activities expire. Nevertheless, the demigods desire to come to the land of Bharatavarsa if even a small portion of the merits of their pious activities remains. In other words, to take birth in Bharatavarsa, one must perform more pious activities than the demigods. In Bharatavarsa, one is naturally Krishna conscious, and if one further cultivates his Krishna consciousness, by the grace of Krishna, he certainly expands his good fortune by becoming perfect in Krishna consciousness, and very easily going back home, back to Godhead. In many other places in the Vedic literature, it's found that even the demigods want to come to this land of Bharatavarsa. A foolish person may desire to be promoted to heavenly planets as a result of his pious activities. But even the demigods from the heavenly planets want to come to Bharatavarsa and achieve bodies that may very easily use to cultivate Krishna consciousness. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu repeatedly says, Bharata bhumate haila manusya janma yar janma sartakakari karapara upakar. A human being born in the land of Bharatavarsa has the special prerogative to develop Krishna consciousness. Therefore, those already born in Bharatavarsa should take lessons from the Shastra and Guru and should fully take advantage of the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in order to be fully equipped with Krishna consciousness. By taking full advantage of Krishna consciousness, one goes back home, back to Godhead. Yanti madhya jinopimam. The Krishna consciousness movement is therefore spreading this facility to human society by opening many, many centers all over the world so that people may associate with pure devotees of Krishna consciousness movement and understand the science of Krishna consciousness and ultimately go back home, back to Godhead. Yes, Bharatavarsa. At one time the whole planet was Bharatavarsa, but due to the effects of the Kali Yuga, it has been reduced to the land of India. But now it's expanding again. Coming out of India, the Krishna consciousness movement, the land Bharatavarsa is now being revived. And by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. So it's been reduced to just the one land of India, but now it's expanding. Like Lord Chaitanya says, every town and village be chanting Hare Krishna, then every town and village means the whole planet will again be recognized as Bharatavarsa. And we look forward to that day when the demonic forces are no longer in control of the resources and the people and the education and the money and the government and the environment. All that will be cleaned up. And the land will again be recognized as Bharatavarsa. Text 29. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, so Sukadev's been telling Maharaj Parikshit, relating to Maharaj Parikshit what the demigods were praying, and now Sukadeva is directly talking to Maharaj Parikshit. He himself is saying, my dear king, in the opinion of some learned scholars, 8 smaller islands surround Jambudvip. When the sons of Maharaj Sagara were searching all over the world for their lost horse, they dug up the earth, and in this way 8 adjoining islands came into existence. The names of these islands are Shvanaprastha, Chandrashukla, Avartana, Ramanaka, Mandaraharana, Panchajanya, Simala, and Lanka. So, up to this point, Sukadeva Goswami has been relating about the different varsas, or the different areas within Jambudvip, which is a section of the universe. And there was a Lavrita Varsa and different Varsas. And this last little section, he was discussing about Bharata Varsa, which is where we are. And so evidently he's finished discussing about Bharata Varsa and how the Lord is worshipped there, and what the mood of devotion is. And now he's going on to describe a little bit more about Jambudvip, and he's saying that there are 8 smaller islands that surround Jambudvip, and evidently they were created when Maharaj Sagara was looking for a lost horse, and the earth was dug up. And these aren't ordinary personalities, and it's obviously not an ordinary horse. This goes back way toward the beginning of the creation of the universe. This is way back early in the beginning of the universe. And Prabhupada has a commentary here. In Kurma Purana, there is a statement about the desires of the demigods. Although the demigods are situated in exalted positions in the heavenly planets, they nevertheless desire to descend to the land of Bhartavarsa on the planet Earth. This indicates that even demigods are unfit to reside in Bhartavarsa. Therefore, if persons already born in Bhartavarsa live like cats and dogs, not taking full advantage of their birth in this land, they are certainly unfortunate. Yeah, so Prabhupada didn't discuss about the verse particularly, about these 8 small islands, but he was still expounding a bit on the previous verse, and how interesting here that Prabhupada points out that although the demigods are situated in exalted positions in heavenly planets, and they nevertheless desire to descend to Bhartavarsa. Prabhupada says this indicates that even the demigods are unfit to reside in Bhartavarsa. I've heard it mentioned, I don't know if I can quote it anywhere, but we do know that the demigods would come to this planet. They would visit. When Krishna's pastimes were manifest, they were coming all the time. And we know there was even conceptions took place. That's how the Pandavas, they were the sons of great demigods, the demigods. Bhima, I believe, was son of Vayu, and Arjuna was a son of Indra, like this. So we know there was some activity there. The demigods were coming. Karna was born from the union of, was it Kunti and Surya, the demigod of the sun? So they were coming here. Of course, Krishna was here at the time, but the Prabhupada points out that that's how special this Bhartavarsa is, and that persons who have this opportunity, he's specifically speaking of Indians now because Bhartavarsa has shrunk down into the land of India, they don't take full advantage of this great opportunity. They're so unfortunate. So, Prabhupada talks about the persons who have taken birth in India quite a bit, how important it is that they've taken birth there, what great opportunity they have, and what a service is there for them to expand the glories of Krishna. Text 31. How did we get to 31? Yeah. It's the last verse of the chapter. My dear King Parikshit, O best of the descendants of Bharat Maharaj, I've thus described to you, and as I myself have been instructed, the island of Bharatavarsa and its adjoining islands. These are the islands that constitute Jambudvip. Okay, so the title of the Canto 5 is the creative impetus. So these are descriptions of the universe, and this is in the very beginning how things were manifesting. And this was a little tour of Jambudvip and the adjoining islands. Jai. So we have a few more minutes. That's the end of that chapter, chapter 19. We can read the summary to chapter 20, and then we'll know what to expect when we read that chapter. So this is chapter 20. Okay, so more descriptions. In this chapter, there's a description of various islands, beginning with Plakshadweep, and the oceans that surround them. There is also a description of the location and dimensions of the mountain known as Lokaloka. The island of Plakshadweep, which is twice as broad as Jambudvip, is surrounded by an ocean of salt water. The master of this island is Idmajiva, one of the sons of Maharaj Priyavata. The island is divided into 7 regions, each with a mountain and a large river. The second island is called Salmaladweep. It's surrounded by an ocean of liquor and is 3,200,000 miles wide, twice as wide as Plakshadweep. The master of this island is Yagnabahu, one of the sons of Maharaj Priyavata. Like Plakshadweep, this island is also divided into 7 regions, each with a mountain and very large river. The inhabitants of this island worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form as Chandratma. The third island, which is surrounded by an ocean of clarified butter and is also divided into 7 regions, is called Kushadweep. Its master is Hanyareta, another son of Maharaj Priyavata, and its inhabitants worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of Agni, the fire god. The width of this island is 6,400,000 miles, or, in other words, twice the width of Salmaladweep. The fourth island, Kranchadweep, which is surrounded by an ocean of milk, is 12,800,000 miles wide, and is also divided, like the others, into 7 regions, each with a large mountain and a large river. The master of this island is Gritapristha, another son of Maharaj Priyavata. The inhabitants of this island worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of water. The fifth island, Sakhadweep, which is 25,600,000 miles wide, is surrounded by an ocean of yogurt. Its master is Metatiti, another son of Maharaj Priyavata. It's also divided into 7 regions, each with a large mountain and a large river, and its inhabitants worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of Vayu, air. The sixth island, Pushkaradweep, which is twice as wide as the previous island, is surrounded by an ocean of clear water. Its master is Vitihotra, another son of Maharaj Priyavata. The island is divided in two by a large mountain named Manasottara. The inhabitants of this island worship Swayambhu, another feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Beyond Pushkaradweep there are two islands, one always lit by the sunshine and the other always dark. Between them is a mountain called Lokaloka, which is situated 1 billion miles from the edge of the universe. Lord Narayan, expanding his opulence, resides upon this mountain. The area beyond Lokaloka mountain is called Alokavarsha, and beyond Alokavarsha is the pure destination of persons who desire liberation. Vertically, the sun globe is situated just in the middle of the universe, in Antariksha, the space between Burloka and Bhuvarloka. The distance between the sun and the circumference of Andaloka, the globe of the universe, is estimated to be 25 koti yajanas, 2 billion miles. Because the sun enters the universe and divides the sky, it is known as Martanda, and because it is produced from Hiranyagarbha, the body of the Mahatattva, it is also called Hiranyagarbha. So that's what we're going to be hearing about, these different areas of the material universe. And it's going to seem very fantastic to us. But we can understand that we're not these bodies, and that there are other material atmospheres that are arranged a little differently from what we see when we look out our window. And so we can accept these things without much difficulty, really. We're on the spiritual platform, we can accept it. When these cantos were first translated in the 70s, a lot of people who were chanting Hare Krishna and practicing devotional service became discouraged and thought that this was unscientific and that it seemed like fairy tales to them. And a lot of people then turned away from Krishna consciousness. So that's unfortunate. For one thing, the other things that we're reading in the Gita and in other parts of the Bhagavatam, specifically this fifth canto, was very difficult for people. Because in this age, people are so enamored by science, because we have so many gadgets, computers, webcams, telephones, and who knows what else, microchips. Soon we'll all be having them embedded in us. Krishna. So many things like that, wizardry and science, different medical tricks that they've come up for prolonging, so-called prolonging life with chemicals and artificial hearts and so many things. So people have a lot of faith in science. These descriptions seem very unscientific, because in most of the scriptures that we're reading, they're really way beyond material science. That's not how this knowledge is acquired. It's acquired in spiritual knowledge on the spiritual platform, which has nothing to do with material science on the material platform. But these particular section, because it appears to be descriptions of something that should be able to be tested scientifically, talking about islands and different types of oceans and arrangements of the universe. It should be able to verify this with telescopes and satellites like this. And because it seems so fantastic that there's an ocean of liquor that surrounds an island that's 3,200,000 miles wide, I mean, it's very difficult for a scientific person who has a lot of attachment to scientific, so-called scientific, gaining their knowledge through their senses. Basically, that's what science is. You gain knowledge through experimentation through the senses. And the funny thing about that is it's always changing. They think they find something very solid, scientific rule or law, and then a few years later, it's proven to be inadequate. It's not the whole picture. It doesn't always work in all circumstances, etc., etc., etc. And then they come up with a new discovery of a new law, and then that one is later on proved to be inadequate and doesn't show the whole thing. So, but still people have a lot of trust and faith in these things, because relying on the type of science that's available, they can build things that you can hold in your hand or you can experience. So it appears to be solid and valid. And when they hear things about, an ocean of clarified butter that surrounds an island that's 6,400,000 miles wide, just they can't accept it. This is unfortunate, but when we get on the spiritual platform, we don't have trouble with it, because we understand that our knowledge is limited through our senses. And that although we can use the products of science, automobiles, computers, telephones, we can use these things. They're there, we can use them. But the knowledge and the science that produce them is really limited and inadequate. The real knowledge comes from knowing the difference between spirit and matter, and identifying with spirit, not matter. So we're going to hear about these things, and for some people that read these things and hear these things, it's a bit of a challenge, but we're not going to have any trouble with it. All right.